welcome to Motoring 88.
Thanks, Brad.
Now, I know you're testing cars each week, but even I know this is not a car.
No, that's right. This is one of the latest 4x4s. It's the fastest growing segment in the industry right now. Jump in, fasten your seatbelt, and hang on to your hat.
It was Motoring 88, Graham's first test drive. In fact, it was Graham Fletcher's first time in front of a camera. Where has the time gone? But the good news is we're still here on this side of the grass, and the Pathfinder is still here. In fact, we're about to test drive its 4th generation. Now, you know, us humans like to kid around that we get better with age. Well, when you're a car company like Nissan, there is no room for doubt. This Pathfinder has to be the best one yet.
The Pathfinder was one of those SUVs that was actually made originally to go off-road. At one point, it used to have a frame, and it was actually a very tough kind of specialist SUV with really good four-wheel drive system aimed at enthusiasts. Now it's kind of joining the mainstream a bit more. It's still good off-road, but it's much more civilized than it used to be, and it's also considerably bigger.
This is really where customers are, asking for us to develop a vehicle, improvements in fuel economy, interior packaging, flexibility with the second row, and just overall amenities and features that customers really want today.
The old Pathfinder was rough and tumble. It found its own path through anything. Now, this new car can go off-roading, but it's much more refined. And while you can't please all the people all the time, I'm thinking that the old Pathfinder customer may not be happy with the new path the company has taken.
It's funny you mention that. I mean, the customer has always been the same. It's kind of a 30-something, really active family. In the past, that was more about, the destination, the rugged off-road, rock climbing. Now it's still the young, active family, but it's more about the journey, enjoying the car and the drive, getting to the destination. We're not too concerned. I mean, the segment's definitely evolved. We think we're going where the customers are, migrating towards.
And there'll be some customers that won't want to leave the body on frame. We have a great exterior for them for that, and we're going to work hard to keep them in the family. At the same time, we haven't walked away from what Pathfinder is. With 5,000 pounds of towing, with a four-wheel drive system that you can still lock into four-wheel drive, which is unique in the segment, we think we'll still deliver that rugged vehicle that the customers want and need.
People don't really want a rugged four-wheel drive, tree-bashing, boony crashing sort of vehicle anymore. They want something that's got some utility. They want the all-weather capability, but they don't want to be beaten up.
Very efficient, award-winning VQ35 V6 engine, 260 horsepower. That really helps in the fuel economy and the efficiency. Customers are still going to get that off-the-line power, the seamless passing. It's a great powertrain for the Pathfinder. I mean, made it to the next generation CVT and quiet cruising.
I'm not one of the guys that hates CVTs by definition, but it made that engine sound noisy. There's kind of a low thrum to it all the time. And normally the VQ V6 Nissan is one of the best V6 engines in the business. So that would bother me a little bit. But the interior is very nice, it's comfortable, rides decently, and it does get the best fuel consumption in the segment. That seems to be important to people.
The Pathfinder comes equipped with what Nissan is calling zero-gravity seats, and they've actually taken technology from NASA. There are sensors throughout each seat, and it's supposed to give you a sense of that you're actually sitting, floating on air. I don't know about that, but I will tell you this, my back and my bum are not complaining, and if they're happy, I'm happy.
You're catering to a group of people who are very particular in their taste and very specific and also very knowledgeable. Manufacturers look at all that when they're designing the cars. They have to make a decision. Are we going to try to appeal to the specialist groups, or are we going to make something more mainstream? And obviously they've gone mainstream with the Pathfinder, at least as far as I'm concerned.
It may not be the Pathfinder of the old days, but that's what the market wants. The customers are going there, and if you want some of them, you better follow.
What's the most fun you can have with your clothes on for, say, $107? I'll show you on the 2-minute test drive.
Healthcare, hockey, and poutine. Oh, Canada. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
Subaru has always marched to the beat of a different drummer. On this edition of Test Drive, well, it's more of the same. This is the all-new XV Crosstrek. Looking back at Subaru's history shows its propensity for unusual vehicles. One need only look back at the Wedgie XT and SVX, along with the short-lived Baja to get the picture. Of late, however, the company had started to move ever closer to the mainstream market, as was witnessed by the likes of the Legacy and Impreza. Now come two left fielders. The BRZ as a sports car minus Subaru's trademark symmetrical all-wheel drive system. The oddly named XV Crosstrek? Well, it's just plain odd. The cabin of this Crosstrek has everything you expect from Subaru. The materials are very nice and the layout entirely logical. For instance, the radio sits high enough up you can actually rely on peripheral vision. Then there's a screen at the top of the center stack. It houses a host of information, including a trip computer. It all comes together as a very functional package. It's just boring. Based on the Impreza, the Crosstrek employs Subaru's 2-litre boxer engine. In this case, it puts forth 148 horsepower and 145 pound-feet of torque at a respectable 4,200 RPM. As is the norm, the boxer engine does have a somewhat gruff tone, but it is a smooth operator that does not mind revving. Sadly, it does a lot of that, and as a result consumed a test average of 10.1 litres per 100 kilometres. Now that's a lot more than the posted numbers. When you drive this Subaru Crosstrek, it actually feels pretty quick and it boils down to the rapid throttle tip-in. However, when you put a stopwatch on it, it's a very different story. It takes 10.8 seconds to amble its way from rest to 100 kilometers an hour, and in the more important 80 to 120 passing move, an agonizing 8.2 seconds. But you know, I think I do have a solution. Put a turbocharger under here. The power is relayed to the road through all four wheels and a continuously variable transmission. There is a manual available. The all-wheel drive system is, in a word, excellent. The transmission unfortunately proved to be anything but. It became continuously annoying because of the manner in which it pegged the engine at the top of the rev range whenever I rolled into the gas, which made things noisy. This perhaps explains why the CVT model gets a hood insulator the manual transmission does not. The silver lining is the manual mode and the access to it through the paddle shifters, and it comes regardless of shifter position. When it comes to utility, the Crosstrek is actually pretty good. 632 litres with the seats up and 1470 with them folded flat. You'll also find a nice flat floor with very little intrusion into the usable space. Then there's a privacy cover and a rear wash wiper. So what's missing? A backup camera. You see, I cannot see the ground whatsoever because of that high belt line until right about here. In terms of ride and handling, the Crosstrek's body does roll because the ride height has been jacked up to 220 millimeters. This tends to introduce a little vagueness in the steering's feedback and understeer surfaces whenever the XV is pushed towards the limit. The ride, however, is refined. Off-road, the elevated ground clearance did allow the XV Crosstrek to traverse some surprisingly gnarly terrain with the sort of aplomb expected of an SUV. No complaints in this regard. Over the past 25 years, I've tested hundreds of cars on motoring, and without exception, I've understood the car. Didn't always agree with the placement and where it was aimed, but I got it. The Crosstrek, I just do not get.
You know, in 25 years, I don't think I've ever said this about a long-term vehicle, in fact, any vehicle for that matter, but it must be said about our long-term Chevy Spark. Please do not buy this vehicle, unless you like the Spotlight. That's my first reaction to the Spark. It comes in some wild colors, including our test vehicle's jalapeno green. Combine that with what I think is some cool styling, the Spark attracts attention from all ages wherever I go. But for a small city car, it's very impressive. Although if you don't like being noticed, maybe, as I said, the Spark is not for you. Although the vehicle isn't new to North America, it was launched in 2009 and has sold over 600,000 in 100 countries so far, and that includes Korea, where it is built. A 5-speed manual is available, although our test car comes with the 4-speed automatic mated to the 1.2-liter 4-cylinder engine. Now, some, including our own Graham Fletcher, have complained it's slow off the mark. 0 to 100 clicks takes about 14 seconds, but hello, it's 84 horsepower, and hey, even General Motors markets a Spark as a city car, and around the city, it does just fine. On the highway, once you're up to speed, it's fairly calm, but plan your passing very carefully. Now, this is Chevy's first so-called mini car, going up against the likes of the Fiat 500 and the Scion IQ, to name a couple. Is it too small to put all your stuff? We'll check that out in our next update.
I give you our car of the year for 2013.
Now, Graham Fletcher will get to announce Motoring's Car of the Year at our upcoming 1-hour special. Where's Graham now? And I just hope that car under the drape back there isn't a 2-seater, right, girls?
Right, Jim.
We'd like you to vote on our Car of the Year nominees and be eligible for some cool swag. Go to motoringtv.com, cast your vote.
The modern take on the car, the 21st century Beetle, is a little bit more masculine, shall we say, squatter, wider, more aggressive looking. Whether that ends up giving us more of a 50-50 split between men and women buyers, we'll have to wait and see.
I would say the last generation was more feminine. However, the 2013 is a lot more, I guess, gender neutral in that sense.
You know, when manufacturers decide they're going to get a performance version of a given model, here's what normally happens. Everybody gets together, they sit around in a room, and I can guarantee you one rocket scientist will come up with this. I know, we could give it more power. Really? This is the fastest and most powerful Camaro yet, the ZL1, and this is the 2-minute test drive. The ZL1 features a supercharged 6.2-liter V8 that puts out a mind-blowing 580 horsepower and 566 foot-pounds of torque. My pet peeve with the ZL1 is that it is very, very difficult to heel and toe in. The main problem is the pedals are too far apart. It's very difficult to get your foot on the brake and then roll your foot to hit the throttle. There's a couple of things I like about the ZL1. First is the magnetic ride. There's a sport mode and a touring mode. And when you're not going like a madman, simply put it on tour and it's a nice, smooth ride. When you're driving the ZL1, you have 5 different traction settings, from mild to wild. And depending on how brave you are, is which one you should pick. I really shouldn't say this about the ZL1, but it doesn't drive like a Camaro. Part of that is the 52-48 weight distribution, and the other thing is the 4-wheel independent suspension. And that's something you can't get on a Mustang.
I like a guy who picks up his own cones.
By now you're probably thinking, all this fun and performance has to come at a price. And you'd be right. And I think it's a very bearable price. Only $107 per horsepower. I'll let you do the math. I'm Russ Bond, and this has been the 2-minute test drive.
The Motoring Tip of the Week is brought to you by Walmart. For everyday low prices on Pennzoil, conventional, and synthetic oils.
Our Motoring Tip of the Week concerns 12-volt tire inflators. Why do you want to have one of these accessories in your trunk? Well, there's a lot of good reasons. First of all, tire manufacturers tell us that a tire, even with no leaks at all, is going to lose approximately 1 psi per month. That's considered quote-unquote normal tire inflation loss. Also, if we've got some rim leaks, we're going to lose air. If we've got a valve stem leak, we're going to lose air. And as we drop ambient temperature, for every 5 degrees ambient that we drop, we lose 1 psi. So if you checked your tires last when it was 15 degrees Celsius and it's 0 today, you've lost 3 psi right there. A tire can be down that much inflation pressure without looking underinflated. Add in the fact that we often have rim leaks or leaks around the valve stem, and it's double jeopardy. This is a really nice model of compressor. Big, bold gauge, red calibration for PSI, black for kilopascals, a little bit of protection here. The gauge is really readable. We've got a separate switch for our work light right here. You get a nice long self-storing air hose with this unit, and you get a nice big, bold, knurled connection that threads onto the valve stem, so it's very positive, very easy to do, very quick, and probably very easy to do in the dark. Most gas stations do have a tire pump, but in many cases it doesn't work well. You'll often find that you can't reach all 4 tires from one parked position. You use up your quarter, your dollar, whatever it is, and you didn't get to that 4th tire to do your inflation. You leave there frustrated, or maybe with the job not done properly. So owning an inflator like this is a great, great thing. Definitely an item you'd want to put on a gift list for your car nut friends, an important safety item for any motorist. That's your motoring tip of the week.
Sunset Speedway near Barrie, Ontario is usually the playground for motoring's Russ Bond and the 2-minute test drive. However, over the summer, the police arrived, not looking for Russ, but to introduce the media to a couple of new toys called the Ford Police Interceptor.
It's a vast improvement of what we've been driving before. The Crown Victoria we've been driving is 1980s technology that keeps getting rebranded. So the technology in this new vehicle that we have right now is far leaps and bounds better than what we used to have.
Engines of choice, we've used a V6 power plants in all of our new Police Interceptor vehicles. Right here we've got a 3.5 litre EcoBoost engine, which offers 365 horsepower. The standard engine is the 3.5 litre V6, and that offers 288 horsepower. And then in the utility we have a 3.7, which puts out 304 horsepower. So it's great that all these engines offer more horsepower than we had in the outgoing Crown Vic. But more importantly than that, they offer 25% improvement in fuel economy and 35% at idle, which is obviously a big part of an officer's day.
The fuel efficiency is good. I get a little peeved when I have to fill up the tank of gas every once in a while, twice a shift sometimes, depending on the traveling, so the fuel efficiency will be fantastic too.
This is the new Ford Taurus Police Interceptor, and the biggest thing you notice about this one right off the bat is it's all-wheel drive. The Crown Vic is just rear-wheel drive. And up here in Canada, police are out all the time, and they have to deal with the weather more than most of us because they have to be out there, so the all-wheel drive is a great idea.
First and foremost, traction control is a fantastic thing, especially for our climates up here. Personally, I don't want to tell you this, but I've been stuck in the snowbank a few times myself and been quite embarrassed doing so with rear-wheel drive vehicles. So with an all-wheel drive vehicle, I'm hoping that's going to be a thing of the past.
The other thing I noticed about this car right away is that the roof line is a lot lower, making the visibility out of the front a little bit more difficult, especially when they have all the cameras and all the computers and everything that they need in here. But one thing I will say that's really good about this car is I like the seats and I like the way it drives. It's got a nice smooth ride, and you can feel with the bigger brakes, it really is more of a performance car.
This is a purpose-built police vehicle. It's not an adapted vehicle that we've been forced into before. The doors open much wider than we're used to. It's almost a 90-degree opening, so getting a person into that car is going to be certainly a much easier task for officers, and the person going in the car is going to be more comfortable for them.
I know I've driven a Crown Victoria for years, not that it ever handled horribly, but compared to these just around the track a little bit that I've done, I just know for a fact that it's going to stick on the road when I need it to. The performance will be there. There's no delay or anything like that, so it's more of a good car for policing.
Closed captioning for Motoring 2013 is brought to you by
Greener, fuel efficient, global. This is Chevrolet Now, driving our world forward.
I was speaking with a man named Tim Franklin the other day. He's the product planning manager for Nissan Canada. Now, Tim is an American, and he's moved up to Canada to do this job. And he's realizing that Canada is more than just better health care. It's a totally different way of marketing. And his challenge is convincing his Japanese people that this is different. Things are different up here. Among other things, you can't sell a short bed pickup truck to a Canadian customer. It's a big part of the American market. Up here, everybody wants a long bed pickup, even with a crew cab, which means some of our pickups are pretty big. Now, Tim thinks that part of that is snowmobiles. Now, not every pickup truck owner has a snowmobile or necessarily carries one in his truck, but that's part of the mentality. Someday, I might just want to do that. Also, he notes that Ford in Canada sells a very low entry price pickup truck, whereas in the States, it's the other way around. Chevrolet works the low end, and Ford is more higher end product. Of course, Dodge Ram is now thrown in there with really low end trucks as well. But the point is, the marketing is different. And another feature that's always intrigued me, Ford Mustang sells a higher percentage of convertibles in Canada than they do in the States. You think, that seems a bit strange. But on the other hand, if summer is defined as 2 weeks of bad skiing, you want to take advantage of it every chance you get, so you buy the ragtop. I guess what Tim is learning is what a lot of people learn. Being in Canada compared to the States, it's like being in a different country. I'm Jim Kenzie.
So is the 4th generation Pathfinder better than the previous? It had better be, and it is. However, a word of warning. If you like the old Pathfinder, well, all I can say is you've still got the Xterra to buy. However, if you did not like the old vehicle, myself included, if you found it too boxy, uncivilized, and a gas guzzler, you're gonna like this one. It has great road manners, that V6 is sweet, and although I don't like CVTs, this one works like a charm. The design, so-so. Let's put it this way, it ain't a Murano. Now I know Nissan may not like this, but this vehicle has gone Main Street. And what's wrong with that? Last I checked, that's where the money is. Before we go, make sure you check us out at Motoring TV, and please join Facebook. We want to hear from you. Get in on the conversation for the total motoring experience. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
This is a brand new segment in Canada. It's growing, and really, you know, one of our key competitors with this car, or with the target we're going for here, is the Hyundai Tucson. And we think customers who are, you know, out there looking for that size of a vehicle will put the Trax on their shopping list.